I was just finishing up a strength training session that I was doing with my good friend Rachel Frey. She's also a registered dietitian, and she practices out in Connecticut. And we were kind of talking about you and your story. And she was wondering like what it was like for you to be trained as a dietitian, and then have to like go back against all the things that you were taught. She mentioned somebody that she went to school with just basically yesterday posted something on social media that was all about how great whole grains and fruits and vegetables and seed oils are amazing and saturated fat is bad for you, and the food pyramid is amazing and all this stuff. And she's just like, being on the other side of this, I can't even like imagine trying to justify any of that stuff. So I want to lead off there. Like, what was it like for you as a registered dietitian to spend all your education, all your training, getting all this done, and finding that it just is not working for your clients or for yourself?
Yeah, it was quite, I don't want to say it was a midlife crisis, but it felt like that in a little bit of a way because, you go through school and you're taught one way and you really, one, you're trying to do that yourself because you want to be the best you could be. You want to feel good. You want to do all this. So you're following these instructions that not only were you taught to give patients and taught to do in the hospital, but that's what everyone's saying works, right? And so I can remember just getting sicker and sicker as time progressed. I went into my residency at the VA hospital as a young dietitian, just trying to soak up as much information that I could. Pretty naive, but and really trying to help my patients. I can remember like I really, and I still feel this way. I deeply care about the people that I work with, mostly because I know what it feels like to be on the other side of sickness. I know what it feels like to have chronic health disease. And so I just remember feeling so frustrated with these recommendations. I remember doing the whole grains. I remember printing out all this paper and all these meal plans and all these ideas to give to my patients with type 2 diabetes, thinking in my head, like, this is really going to be helpful. And that same patient would come back 3 months later with, double the A1C and put on 45 pounds. So it just became this endless cycle of frustration, not only for me when I was trying to help my clients, but also my own health was really, really, really going down the drain. And honestly, I tell a lot of people ask me if you knew what you knew now, would you go back and still become a dietitian? The answer to that question would always be yes, because I think that that's what propelled me into this space and gave me an actual voice. But I do know that that came with a bit of a cost. One, my health really suffered for years. But yes, I would do it all over again. I would just immediately start out of the gate doing things completely different. And I say that I really only practiced as a traditional dietitian for probably a year and a half when I started to switch. But I'm really blessed, and I consider myself thankful for the journey that I went on with my own health, because I don't think I would have came out so strong against traditional dietitian teaching and standards, had I not suffered as much as I suffered in my young early 20s as a brand new dietitian. I don't know that I would have ever flipped the script and decided to speak out against what we were taught and what I learned, and ultimately led me to practice completely different than what I used to.
Well, this is why, like, when a doctor decides to stay in the medical system, even after learning this stuff, I'm never opposed to whatever they choose to do, because you have a voice and the letters behind your name carry some weight that my name does not necessarily carry that same weight, right? Like, I'm a nutritionist and I can tell you something about nutrition, but you did all the schooling and all the training that gives you that clout to be able to say that. So whether or not, a doctor or somebody like you as a registered dietitian ends up leaving and doing their own thing, or they stay in the field and continue practicing, we need those spokespeople, those voices in every level. So I really respect that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And I think it's good for people to know too, like a lot of what we're taught in school as dietitians was the basics of metabolism. I could write out the Krebs cycle for you. I can do all these things, biochemistry and all this. Ultimately, I think when you're looking for a practitioner, whether it's a dietitian or a doctor or whatever, is one, are they able to learn and pivot? And two, what is their experience like? And I'm not saying judge your doctors or dietitians based on what they look like, but it is sometimes a good indicator of, are they living a disciplined, healthy lifestyle? Do they look like they hold themselves to the standard that they're asking you to follow as well? So I don't want to get too on that TED talk, but I think that it is I think that doctor shopping and dietitian shopping is not a bad idea, when you're judging who you want to listen to in the medical field, the health spaces.
Yeah, that's very interesting. You said almost word for word what Rachel and I were just talking about, and she mentioned the same thing about this girl that went to the training with her. She said, like, open up the books that you and I used and studied, and the Krebs cycle and the chemistry, like it's all there. How can you make those same conclusions? Like, was it a kind of a cognitive dissonance for you to like learn the science, learn the biochemistry, understand how things work, and then these recommendations are like kind of not the same? Was that weird?
It was very weird. And what made it even more weird and more shocking was the results. So that's the what I was seeing in my patients is what ultimately made me go crack open books again, is because I was essentially teaching them what I was taught to teach them as a conventional medicine dietitian, and they just kept getting worse. And so I'm thinking, why are these the recommendations if I'm giving exactly what I was told to give? I mean, I'm calculating these people's macros to a T. They're showing me their food logs, all this stuff. There's not a they're not doing it wrong, and I'm not giving the wrong advice, yet their results are so bad. Like they just are not getting better. We're having to up insulin, we're having to do all this stuff. And so that's ultimately what made me turn around and go back and say, okay, here are the basics. Where did we go wrong with these recommendations, and what could we do instead? And are the results speaking for themselves? Because once that light turns on, and I don't know one person in the low carb ketogenic space who would disagree with this, once you see the results, once you see the patients coming off insulin, once you see the endocrinologist calling you and asking, hey, what are you doing? Why are all your patients coming off of multiple units of insulin? Why are we having to discontinue metformin? Why is all this amazing stuff happening? You cannot shut the light off once you see it. And that's ultimately what made me quit my job, you know? And thankfully, I have the most supportive husband in the whole world who was like, you know what, Temple, go for it. But it was so convicting to be in the sick care system that I really couldn't participate in anymore, because I one loved the patients, that the patient population I worked with veterans as a startup, and I love that patient population. Most of my family fit into that patient population, and I it was heartbreaking to see the disaster of the sick care system on them. And I just came home one day and I said, like, I cannot participate in this anymore. And I want to do my own thing. I want to say my own thing. And in the hospital system, you're pretty tightly regulated on how you can practice and what you can say and all that. And so, anyway, that was a long-winded way of answering that question. But once that light bulb comes on, you can't turn it off. And from then on out, it just changes the way you view health and the conventional medical system.
Yeah, for sure. That is so well said. And I agree 100%. I can't even like think of a name of somebody who made it to this space and then decided this wasn't for them and they got out of it to some extent. Like even if somebody went like really strict carnivore and then they started opening up their diet a little bit, it's still within the walls of the low carbohydrate space. And like to not be able to even think of like one person. I can't name a single person. And you're right, like the energy and enthusiasm of everybody once they find this, their next step is they just want to share it. They're so excited, they're so pumped up about it. And yeah, I don't know of anybody who's gotten into this that it ends up like getting away from it.
100%, me either. And I think almost everyone that I've met either has a story themselves of their own health, or is a physician, practicing physician, and was frustrated with either their own health or the way their patients were responding, or a world-renowned scientist like Dr. Bickman, who looked deeper into the research and is seeing the contradictions as well. And so yeah, it's truly incredible to hear the passion behind everyone, because I think a lot of that is driven by their own health, their patient population, or seeing an area where we're not helping people as much as we could.
Yeah. It's like at this point, if it were a fad, like so many of us would have stopped doing it. If this were bad for your heart, where are the bodies of all the Sean Bakers and Ben Bickmans and all the people that have been doing this for so long? Where are the bodies piling up with heart attacks? You just don't ever hear of it or see anything along those lines.
You don't. And one of the other things too is I would add fertility to that list. That was really the defining, not the defining, but that was really the one thing where I cared about my weight, because I was pushing 200 something plus pounds, but I was really desperate for a baby. Like that was my dream. I want to be a mom. I want to have a bunch of kids. Like I want to do all this. And I couldn't get pregnant, and I was 21. Like what is happening, And so yes, the bodies and then the results again, like I didn't mean to become a bit of pregnancy niche, but by doing keto and weight loss, have become, I've had 60 plus clients get pregnant that have come to me for weight loss or PCOS symptoms. And it's just like, wow, it's amazing what your body can do when you give it the right nutrition. And like you said, the results speak for themselves. We're not having people keeling over of, heart attacks and all these other things. And so it really is incredible.